As I mentioned in the introduction video, we'll follow the steps of the Hobby Boss plans where we can. There will be some differences, even on the first step. The leaf springs on the KrAZ model I'll leave off to a later stage just because how involved they are in the paper. So I've done some prep work before we start, and I 3D printed a sprue holder or stand. I'm not sure about it yet. It takes up a fair bit of real estate, but we'll see how it goes. I might just abandon it and work from the box as usual. For the paper kit, I've separated the booklet and filed them away in these display books. So I put the assembly diagrams into one, and I scanned and translated the instructions and put these into another book, just so I can read the instructions as I work through the assembly diagrams. For the parts themselves, I've put the pages into these plastic wallets just to protect them from damage. So one wallet's enough for them all, but what I've done is I've split them out just to give them a bit more space. And I've got a wallet with the thin paper and the laser cut details for the wheels. I've also got a spare couple of wallets as well, because as you start cutting parts out that you're going to make, other parts become free. So I can put the small cut-offs into another wallet just to protect them, keep them together. So with that said, let's get moving and we'll make a start. So step one's the frame or chassis rails, and for the Hobby Boss, some of the rear suspension. So that's all the parts cut out. On the rails on the inside, we've got a number of ejector pins. Now, I'm guessing these won't be seen, but we'll fill them anyway and sand them back. You probably could just get away with a light sand with a sanding stick getting in there, but I'll just put a wee bit of Mr. Surfacer 500, probably over the top actually, but we'll do that anyway. Okay, so I'll just keep doing this. I just noticed how doing that, I have to remember to remove these sprue gates here. Whilst we're waiting for the Mr. Hobby 500 to go off, have a look at the other parts that need cleaning. So on the springs, you can see there's a mold line both sides all the way around. We'll have to remove that. The other thing to be careful is on the springs, these are actually a peg. So you need to make sure you don't drop them off too low. Probably also have to use a knife for some of the areas, so I can get into the top here. But once we start getting down further in, I can't get in with the sander, so we just need to pare it back. Okay, so I'll finish cleaning these up. Okay, so that's all the parts cleaned up now, ready for assembly. There was one issue where these D-bolts for the springs, where I broke one of them trying to clean up the sprues. So I just made another one out of brass wire. Rear with the pulleys for the winch and the guide rollers. So on the leaf springs, we've got this mounting point here, a bit flush on one side. There's a notch on the other end. That's for this cap. And then on the underside, we've got these plates, which is for the D bolts. And they slip over the leaf springs into the holes very nicely, actually. And see how my brass one did. It's overly long, so. Okay, so it's in now. So just lock this plastic one in. I'll just use thin CA. Okay, so a trial fit on this back section here shows that the fit's not the best. As you can see, this end is sticking up. But we actually, I don't know if you can see it, this is on an angle. So we need to trim this. And that's fitting a lot better now. There's a little peg here for this cutout. Okay, so with that trimmed, that now fits relatively well. Okay, so we'll get the other half put on while we can still manipulate the chassis to keep it nice and square. What we're going to do, just hold that block there. We'll just leave that to go off for a wee bit. Actually, I've just noticed I should have installed this part first. So it's got long flat edges along the chassis, so that'll help square it up. So hopefully you can see it goes into that slot there. So the last thing to do now is just fit this front, which will lock the okay. So last check to make sure everything's squared up. Now the instructions don't say not to glue this onto here. However, I'm going to leave them unglued for the time being. Okay, so this one's correct. This one is wrong. I'm going to leave them loose for the moment until we've got some more assemblies here so we can actually get it level. Because if I glue it and it's slightly askew, it's going to be a problem. That's step one, the Hobby Boss. Okay, so moving on to the paper model now, we can have a look at the various parts made up. So we've got the chassis rails here, the pulley system at the rear, the front plates, an intermediate plate, another intermediate plate, a cross member in there. I think that's the rear panel for the pulleys, and then another intermediate cross member. There's a greater number of parts, as you can see, than the plastic model, so let's cut them all out now and then we can have a look. So for the chassis rails, I'm just going to cut out all the left-hand ones at the moment, purely because I don't want to get the parts mixed up and it's a bit confusing with the assembly details at the moment. I'm going to roughly cut them out first, and I'm going to use just one of these disposable segmented knives just to save the good ones, the good blades, and just try to make sure I don't cut into the part. Normally I do it freehand, but because the parts are so close together, I'll use the ruler. So 1L is the main chassis rail for the left, P is the right. So I'll just separate these and put this on the side. And then 2L here. And then 1AL. Remember, P is right, so we need this one. And then this one here, 2L. Need these two parts here as well. I'll finish cutting out the rest of the parts and then we can come back. Right, so that's the chassis rail for the left-hand side cut out. These are all the parts for the various cross members. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cross members, 6 cross members plus the pulley system. It sits on the end. What's not here is another 25 or so parts that make up the winch, which sits in this area. So I'll be able to show that later, but we really need to do it at the same time as the chassis rails, I think. But let's start assembling these. Okay, let's make a start cutting these out now and forming into shape. So just a point about blades. The blade's got a bevel on both sides. So if you cut straight and vertical, you'll put a bevel into each side of the paper. So what I do is, and this is why I like the Swan Morton blades, if I tilt it so this bevel is vertical, you impart a vertical cut in the paper. Okay. And when I'm cutting parts out, I always put the ruler over the part that you want to keep. Do it the other way. If you slip or go offline, you're going to damage that part. If you slip or go offline, you're just going to go into the waste paper. Okay. Okay. That's the first part cut out. Now, if I was trying to maintain the paper colour, I would edge colour, but because I'm going to paint the whole thing, I don't need to bother. So we need to bend this, so I'll just get a pencil. Okay, so I've just sharpened a little pencil, so we want to make the fold lines. So on the chassis rail, you've got an outside, which is this part of, and then an inside. So the outside we need to fold that way. So what I'll do, I've got this little ball thing here, and what this does is this crushes the fibres of the paper. Because if you try and bend it without doing anything on the reverse side, when you fold it, it bunches up. So with the fibres flattened down, it's got space for it to go into. Now that's my normal method, but I want to try this big darning needle as well. As I saw someone mention that in another YouTube video. Okay, so that should fold easy now. What I've done so, because I'm going to have to do a long straight fold on these main rails, it's going to be a lot harder to stop the top distorting. So what I've done, just printed out some 3D angles, just as an experiment. And then so that should be 90 degrees. So that's the first of the chassis rails done. Of course, the inner bit is folded the other way and that sits inside. So that's going to strengthen it up really well. So I'll go and do all these, and then we can come back once we're finished that. So that's all the spars folded up now. So the order of assembly is, you've got the outside rail, a packer, and then inside rail. Now the K on the packer, the legend says glue to carton. To me it was always the kit paper. And the instructions for this section here says laminate is appropriate. So the only thing I can think of appropriate is, when this inserts here, that the edges are level. If it's too thick, this one's going to be higher. If it's not enough, this one's going to be lower. So what I think, and I haven't tried this yet, I'll just use the paper packer as it is. Get to the end of it. And then this one. Okay, so it depends how accurate my cutting is, but it does look like we need to laminate this. So let's just see what two thicknesses would be like. And that's probably closer to the correct size. So we'll laminate these into normal paper. Just to show you the rails, I don't know if I can fit them all in, but because of the length, and we've got a long and short side, the joints are staggered. Got a joint there. So you've got this strengthener which will go across on that side and go across the joint on this side. Let's just have a look. Back side's falling off. You get an idea just of the size this is going to be. Once we've got the three parts joined up, it's going to be pretty stiff. Next thing is we'll laminate these. Okay, so I found a piece of paper, the same thickness as the kit parts. So we'll laminate these now. In the past, I used to just use wood glue. but I really want to try this again. I used this on the KrAZ decks and it's worked really well, so we'll give this a go. I'm working on glass and you'll see why in a second. So I'll just get a broad brush here. So I've got 2 sheets of glass here and I'll just use this as a press. What I normally do is just use some clamps. Okay. I normally hang this over the edge of the table so it's lying flat. And the glue wipes off easy off the glass. And if you let it dry, you can just use a scraper just to clean it up. Over there, we'll just do the other thickeners for the right hand side. Again, same process. Okay, so that's the Parkers all laminated and nice and flat. So we just need to cut them out and then we can assemble the chassis rails. Okay, so we'll put the Parker in now. So I've just drawn a pencil line on the end here for its extent. So we'll set that aside to dry. I've got a little wedge here that I can put down and then I can clamp it to the edge of the table till it dries. We'll be as well doing the short section at the back as well. So we've got some printed bolts here and that aligns with the join at the back. So we need to make sure we go forward this way. And then I've marked on, just in pencil, the extent that we'll do for this joint. Okay, so it's now time to stick the 2 sides together. You can see it fits nicely there. So we'll glue this and place this on top. I'm going to try the wood glue. The other glue is really good. It grips very quickly. And I need time to get this joint here sorted. Okay, so it's now time to fit the inner rails. And again, it's in 2 parts. So we've got a lap. And I'm just going to glue the base and leave the sides, and we can come back and do the sides later. I think if we try and do the sides and the base at the same time, potentially get into a bit of a mess. So that's both rails assembled now, and I've noticed once they glue together, we've got a bit of a bow here, but we've still got another step to do, and that's to glue the two edges, both sides together. So I've done one side on one, and that's taken the bow out, because the bows were bowed. So we've got a fairly good straight right angle edge there. So I've still the other side to do. I did this first one off camera just to try a proof of concept, and it seems to have worked for this one. So I'll show you how I did this edge now, and then I have to do the same for both edges in this one. So the first thing we're going to do is fold this inner edge inwards, and that's also pushing the outer edge out. But I really want to push the inner one in to re-establish the angle or the bend, so it's going to go flat when we come to glue it up. This short narrow edge here doesn't have the same edge to get onto the... Okay, so try and do this a bit by hand just to put a bend back into it. So I'll just reposition the camera so you can see. Unfortunately, you're going to have to look at my belly. So I got some aluminium channel, and I'm working on the edge of the table here. I can push that up against the established angle or the edge of the rail, and then I can clamp this in place. So I'll just use wood glue, and we'll just put a bead on that edge. And then using a brush, just make sure it's applied onto the full surface. And we'll just roll or fold the edge back up just to get it closer. Now I've got another piece of angle here, and I'm using that to squeeze it flat and get a right angle. Now the next step is to use this glass sheet, because it's very heavy, because it's double thickness. I can use that to push and maintain the pressure against this bar, so we're trapping the double fold between the two aluminium channels. So we just leave it to go off now. The first edge I did, the back side, I probably left 2 or 3 hours. Okay, so that's both side rails completed now. The last thing to do is just fold over and glue this end treatment here on both sides. So that's the left and right. We've developed a wee bit of a bow in the other direction now, but there's no strength in that. So hopefully the cross members will take that into account. So talking of cross members now, let's have a look at them. So I went ahead and assembled all the cross members off camera just to keep a video to a reasonable length. A lot of the techniques will come across in other videos, so I haven't really missed much. Some of them turned out really nice. Quite happy how this one did. This was the one I was looking least forward to doing, and it came out probably the nicest. This is the rear one. Again, we've got another one that folded up really nicely. I'm quite happy with that. And then the front one, you see there's still some spaces here, and we've got the toe and pin and the steps for getting up onto the bumper, but I'll leave them off until down the track, purely because I don't want to knock them off because they're pretty fragile. And a couple of others which turned out quite nice. And the pulley system at the back. I don't know if you can see the pulleys there. Got some 3D printed nuts and bolts, but we'll touch on them shortly. Again, some parts here, it won't be fitted until after it's installed. Some assemblies weren't that great. Didn't make a very good job with this one, but again, it's underneath in the chassis and there's lots over the top, so we won't see this anyway. But yeah, that was disappointing, that one. So let's go ahead and start installing them. Right, let's start attaching all these cross members. So the instructions say to start with this one. I've called that assembly 5, and you can see the 5A and 5, which is 5A and 5. And just to confirm, these straps here are for a roller. It points to the front, and this cutout on the left hand side is at the top, so that's the orientation. We'll apply some glue to the inner flange. Glue's very runny. Luckily this won't be seen because it's a mess. And then we'll apply to these angles here. Just give this a bit of a squeeze. I really messed up the glue application on this. And we'll just press on that inner flange there. There's the first one down. And see if I can remove some of that excess with a damp brush. It's just a mess. So I'm going to straighten out these because they're going to get in the way from my next step, which is to attach the other cross member. So I want to place it flat like this. Okay, so I've just clamped some angle in a square, and remember this is left hand side. We'll flip it over. I'll just put it against there for the time being. And then the right will flip over and we'll be able to glue this in. So the reason I've got this square here is to make sure that the ends are at right angles, so we're not one way or the other way. And because of the bows, as you can see, we want to straighten that up as well. I've actually printed out some 3D blocks, the width of the gap, and that's just to stop when this gets glued to being like that or like that. So I'm trying to keep the parallel as much as possible. And then we'll use the other piece to push against, and we'll use the glass plate again. So I'll just get that. Okay, so I'll use a smaller brush this time. We'll just apply the glue to the flange. Lift that up. Press that down in there. Press that. So it's not too bad there. I'll just press this up against the frame. Glass on just for weight. So you can see we've still got the bows in the front and back, but that's the first cross member in place. Okay, so the next part we'll attach is the rear panel. So we've got two strips extend either side and they fit between the rails. So what I'm thinking is, if we slide them in first, we can slide that back a bit. Make sure they're both bottom and top inside, and they are. We can apply glue to the tabs, and then we can slide it forward into position. And then we can just check the bottom is lined up, and we'll just squeeze to secure. There's a couple of angles to go in here which will lock these flanges. This one looks not too bad. This one seems, I can pull up. Next parts, this one here, the larger hole goes onto the right. So we've got a flat bit to go into the inner rail, and then the angle plate and screws. Might just do the same. Put that in first. Trying to work out how to push it down without destroying it. There we go. Yeah, this rail that I made just wasn't the best. So moving on to 10A. This is not very clear in the instructions. Obviously it goes in this side. What's the front and what's the back? According to the overall diagrams, it does appear that this flange goes to the rear. So we do the same. We'll apply glue to the inner. And we'll just put the blocks in, see how it's lining up. That's not too bad that. Okay, so we've got this one next. Now, because we're working upside down, I don't want to confuse myself. But so again, we'll just place it in here and then we can slide it forward. Probably can't see, I'm just pushing it so I can get the flanges hard against the desktop so I can press it down. Do the same on this side. Just needs to be squared up. Very difficult to apply pressure to the rail. Yep, it's looking good. Everything seems to be squaring up nicely now. So the last piece is the very front. A bit wide, so I'm going to have to split the difference, make sure it's centered. Okay, so that's all the cross members in. We'll come back and attach the last of the plates and angles and whatnot to finish them off. Okay, so we'll get these angle braces on now. Okay, so next up is this parts here. I think I made this cross member a bit too big because I'd imagine this section here should be touching both rails, but it's not going to be noticed. You've got your suspension and wheels and everything here. You've got the cargo bed. You're not going to see that. So I'll just have to center it. And then we've got these other plates. So the last part to put on is this roller here. Okay, so that's the roller done. So the last thing to attach is a pulley assembly at the back there. So that's the chassis more or less done. Overall, pretty happy with it. I can see a slight bulge in this area. I'm going to see it. It appears to be flat and parallel. Apart from that, we know twists or warps in it, so happy enough. I haven't done the front step or the front hitch. The instructions say to leave it off anyway. And same goes for the rear hitch as well. Doing this whole assembly, we do the rear bumpers and that, but I'll wait until we do the Hobby Boss ones. Now what I'm going to do next though, is you may remember we've got 1mm, 1.5, 2mm bolt heads, 1.5, 2mm, so double up, and then you've got 1mm and 1.5mm nuts. The centre suggests that the studs pops through there. So what I have done is I've 3D printed the same plus some rivets. So let's get some light onto this. So I've got the 1mm, 1.5mm nuts with the stud poking through. I'm not sure how well you can see that. And then I've got 1mm, 1.5 and 2mm bolt heads. And then I did 1.5, 2mm just rivets, because on the diagram there's quite a lot of just rounded heads. They're very lightly printed, but we can see here it's probably 1.5mm. I'll put bolt heads on them. This is what I was talking about there. You can see marks there. Very faint on that panel, but they appear to be rounded, and then the steps will have nuts with the stud showing. And very faint here, we've got the rear round, so I'm assuming that's like a round head. So I'll show one, and then I'll do the rest off camera. And then on the pulley, that's what I use there, the 1.5 nut with the stud, or the bolt showing through. Also, I'll do off camera because it's not a great deal, but we've got these paper pads to go in here, 4 of. So we just come in. I made these a bit too thick. I could have made them smaller, but I was worried in case they didn't print well. I tried using God hand snips to take them off, and it does work, but I think the better way, which you probably aren't going to see very well, is just to come in with the razor and slice it down. So I'm just going to use wood glue. So I'll finish these off, then we can come back for a final summary. Okay, so that's as far as I'm going to go with this chassis. As I mentioned, left off some bits. You could say I went a bit over the top with guides and jigs and whatnot, but I was really paranoid about getting twists and bends and bows into the frame, so probably don't need to do that. That's just me. The only real issue, maybe it's not visible, a slight bow here because of this first part. And this is the first part I made and wasn't as good or accurate as it could have been. This brace here is pretty bad really as well. The other ones quite happy with. They've turned out not too well. Not too bad. So that's it for step 1 for the chassis. Let's just have a look at them together now. So obviously the Hobby Boss plastic went together really quickly compared to the amount of time and effort for the paper. But that was expected, and it's going to be the same all the way through. Considerably larger difference on the plastic in the card is the plastic's got this plates here, which is for the suspension and running gear assembly, whereas the card obviously is done at a later stage. It's going to be much more involved. Also, we've got the cargo bed support here, and you can actually see where it would be bolted down to the chassis. Card one or paper one, that's done later, but you can see the same 4 areas for bolting it down. Also, we're missing 1, 2, 3 cross members. I'm assuming they'll go in later. Okay, so we'll call that done for part 1, or step 1 I should say. Okay.